Part 1. Morning silence that doesn't ask permission. When the day hasn't even begun and the night hasn't even had time to leave, I sit on the edge of the kitchen chair, as if on the edge of myself. The window doesn't speak yet, but it's already breathing. And in this silence, the first thing I do is not wake up, not pray, not plan. It's coffee. Not as a drink, but as a gesture. Like something that holds me when I can't hold myself. I don't know if it's a habit, or a ritual, or just a way not to fall apart. But when my fingers touch the cup, something inside me says, "You're still here." And that, sometimes, is enough. Because coffee doesn't cure. It doesn't erase fatigue, it doesn't take away pain, it doesn't turn night into day. But it's there. It's warm. It doesn't ask why I'm silent. And that's more than I can ask for. I watch the steam rise from the cup, like smoke from thoughts I didn't say. And in this steam are my lost words. The ones I didn't say to Yulia when she cried. The ones I didn't say to myself when I couldn't breathe. The ones I didn't say to my mother when she asked, "Are you sure you're happy?" I wasn't. But coffee doesn't ask. It just is. And I think, how many times have we held on not to the content, but to the form? Not to love, but to its traces? Not to people, but to their voices in memory? Coffee is a form. It's not a hug, not a conversation, not salvation. But it holds. Sometimes that's enough to keep me from falling. I drink slowly. Not because I enjoy it, but because I'm afraid that when the cup is empty, I'll be left alone. And so each sip is like a breath, like a pause between words that aren't there. I don't know if that's normal. But I know it's mine. And when Yulia comes into the kitchen, still in her pajamas, with eyes that haven't slept, I don't say, "Good morning." I just put a cup in front of her. And she understands. Because coffee is not a drink. It's a way of saying, "I'm here. I'm with you. I don't know how to cure you. But I can hold you while you're hurting." Part 2. Coffee that was silently there when everything was falling apart. There are days when even the silence seems loud. When every sound is like a blow, and every word is like a betrayal. The day we lost her, I couldn't speak. I couldn't cry. I couldn't even breathe normally. I just sat in the kitchen, and the coffee was in front of me. It was hot, fresh, as always. But I couldn't drink it. I just looked at it, like something that was left when everything else was gone. Yulia sat opposite, with hands that didn't know where to put themselves. Her eyes were empty, like a room after moving. We didn't talk. We didn't touch. We just were. And coffee was with us. It didn't heal. It didn't change anything. But it held us in the moment when everything else fell apart. I remember her mother lying in that room, no longer breathing, but still present. And we didn't know how to live on. But coffee was on the table. As a sign that something was still there. Something that hadn't disappeared. Something that wasn't afraid to be there, even when it hurt. I don't know why coffee. Maybe because it's simple. Maybe because it doesn't demand anything. Maybe because it's like us, imperfect, bitter, but warm. And at that moment when the world became alien, coffee was the only thing that didn't betray us. We drank it in silence. Sip after sip. Like a prayer without words. Like a farewell that can't be loud. And every sip is an attempt to stay alive. Not strong. Not right. Just alive. I looked at Yulia, and she looked at me. And we didn't say, "Everything will be fine." Because we knew it wouldn't be. But there was coffee. And it held us. Not like medicine. But like a witness. Like a shadow that doesn't leave, even when the light goes out. Part 3. Coffee as a way not to disappear into everyday life. There are days when pain does not scream, but simply lies nearby. Like an old blanket, like a shadow on the floor, like the sound of a refrigerator humming in the silence. And on these days, coffee is not a ritual, not a symbol, not poetry. It is simply a way not to disappear. Not to dissolve in everyday life, in to-do lists, in other people's voices that say, "You have to be strong." I wake up, not because I want to, but because I have to. I go to the kitchen, not because I'm hungry, but because my body moves by inertia. I turn on the kettle, not because I'm waiting for heat, but because my hands remember how to do it. And coffee appears, as always. It doesn't ask if I'm ready. It just is. I drink it, looking out the window, where nothing changes. The same trees. The same people going to work. The same cars that drive by, not knowing that I exist. And coffee keeps me in this moment. Not as a hero, not as a poet, but as an ordinary person who just wants to live until the evening. Yulia is sleeping. Her breathing is the only thing that reminds me that we are still here. And I make her coffee. Not because she asked, but because it is our way of saying, I see you. We don't always talk. We don't always touch. But coffee is our touch. Our, I am near. Our, I know it is difficult for you, but I am here. Sometimes I take a cup with me to the room where I work. It stands next to my laptop, like a guard, like a talisman, like something that reminds me, you are not just functioning. You are living. Even if this life is not loud, not bright, not confident. It is yours. I think about all the times when coffee was with me, after an argument, after a loss, after a night of anxiety, after a conversation that left scars. And it didn't heal. But it was there. And that's more than I can say about some people. When Yulia wakes up, I put a cup in front of her. She doesn't say, thank you. She just takes it as something that belongs to her. And we are silent. But in this silence, there is everything. There is love. There is fatigue. There is hope. There is coffee. Part 4. Coffee as a letter left in a cup. There are things we don't say. Not because we don't want to, but because we don't know how. And coffee became the place where these things live. It is like a letter I didn't send. Like a phrase I didn't say. Like a look that remained in the air when Yulia had already left the room. I remember that morning when we were silent longer than usual. She sat opposite, with a cup in her hands, and looked out the window. I wanted to say, I'm afraid of losing you. But I said, should I add milk? And coffee became what I couldn't say. It held my words like warmth that didn't become fire. Another time I was sitting alone, after an argument, after I said something harsh, something that wasn't true, but was painful. I made coffee as an apology, as an attempt to come back. And when she came in, I didn't say, sorry. I just put the cup in front of her. And she took it. And we were silent. But coffee said it all. I think about how many times we used coffee as a language. As a way to say, I love you, I'm afraid of you, I don't understand you, but I want to be there. And each cup is like a paragraph. Like a line. Like a pause between words that weren't there. When I'm alone, I drink my coffee slowly. And I think about all the things that are left inside me. All the letters I didn't send. All the moments when I could have said, I hear you, but said, have you finished drinking? And coffee keeps it. It doesn't forget. It doesn't erase. It just holds. I sometimes imagine that each cup is an archive. And if someone ever finds them, they will be able to read my story. Not through words, but through silence. Through warmth. Through bitterness. Through presence. Because coffee doesn't heal. But she remembers. And when Yulia says, you are silent today, I smile. And I put a cup in front of her. And she understands. Because we have learned to read each other through coffee. Because of what is not said. Because of what is left in the cup. Part 5. Coffee as proof that we are still here. There are moments when life seems blurred. When the days merge like water in a cup, when you don't remember what happened yesterday, because today is already difficult. And in these moments, coffee is not just a drink. It is proof. Testimony. A silent sign that we are still here. That we are still capable of ritual. Of gesture. Of presence. I make coffee even when I don't want to. Even when the body says, stay in bed, and the soul is silent. Because coffee is not about desire. It is about choice. About what I choose to be. I choose to breathe. I choose to hold the cup, even if my hands are shaking. Julia sometimes says, you always make coffee, even when you're sick. And I smile. Because that's when I need it the most. Not as medicine, but as a reminder that I'm still capable of caring. That I'm still capable of warmth. That I'm still capable of being there. We drink coffee together. Sometimes in silence. Sometimes with short phrases that don't matter, but have weight. And each sip is a confirmation. We're still here. We're still capable of being. We're still capable of holding each other, even if we don't know how. I think about all those mornings when coffee was the only thing that kept me going. All those evenings when it was the last thing left. And I'm grateful. Not for the taste. Not for the effect. But for its presence. For the fact that it didn't disappear when I was on the edge. When Julia and I talk about the future, we're not always sure. We don't know where we will be. How we will be. But we know there will be coffee. And that is already something. That is already a point of support. That is already a gesture that says, I am with you. I don't know how to cure you. But I can be there. And when I look at the cup, which is already empty, I don't feel a loss. I feel a trace. Like after a hug. Like after a conversation. Like after a silence that said more than words. Coffee doesn't cure. But it holds. And sometimes that is enough to live another day.